Hi, welcome, and thank you for tuning into Kirb Appeal, a limited series celebrating the 30-year history of everyone's favorite little pink hero, Kirby. I'm Alex Reynolds, and today we're going to be taking a quick look at Kirby Tilt N Tumble, so let's hop on a warp star and head back once again to the start of the new millennium.
Introducing new tilt response technology. Now you move the Game Boy, not the buttons. Kirby Tilt N Tumble, rated E for everyone, only on GameBoy Color. Get into it!
Kirby Tilt N Tumble was released in Japan on August 26, 2000, and in North America on April 9, 2001. In November and December of 2000, the US presidential elections went through the now infamous Florida recount, with the Supreme Court ultimately awarding the presidency to George W. Bush over Al Gore.
Just moments ago, I spoke with George W. Bush and congratulated him on becoming the 43rd President of the United States. And I promised him that I wouldn't call him back this time.
In January of 2001, both Wikipedia and iTunes were launched.
Here's iTunes. Comes up, doesn't have any songs in it. So let me go ahead and rip a CD. I'm going to put in an old B-52 CD here.
The music being played on iTunes the most at the time included Stan by Eminem, which 20 years later would inspire the fandom term of the same name.
It's kind of like a message to the fans to let them know that, you know what I'm saying, like everything that I say is not meant to be taken literally. Right. Just most of the things that I say. Okay.
Minority by Green Day. And Get Your Freak On by Missy Elliott.
Missy be putting it down. I'm the hottest round. I'm the mother. You can't stop me now.
In movies, the end of 2000 saw the release of How the Grinch Stole Christmas, Meet the Parents, and Finding Forrester.
You're the man now, dog. You're the man now, dog. You're the man now, dog.
While the start of 2001 saw the release of Memento, Spy Kids, and
Would you like some sausage?
On television, in September of 2000, the 52nd Primetime Emmy Awards were broadcast, with big winners including The Sopranos, The West Wing, and Will and Grace. And March 2001 marked the premiere of Hot Topic Darling Invader Zim.
What are you watching? Angry monkey? That's horrible monkey.
Apart from the big hitters of 2000, other video games that were released around this time included Phantasy Star Online, Conker's Bad Fur Day, and Mario Tennis, and with it, the debut of Waluigi. And while Sega was launching its short-lived dial-up gaming network for the Dreamcast SegaNet, Nintendo was working on innovations of its own with a little game called Kirby Tilt N Tumble. Developed by HAL Laboratory and Nintendo R&D 2, Kirby Tilt N Tumble continued the tradition of HAL Laboratory games, and Kirby games specifically being a sandbox for what the consoles they were released on were capable of, in this case including the use of motion-sensing accelerometers in the cartridge. This made the cartridge bigger,
I like them round and big.
But because of their already special manufacturing requirements, Nintendo thought they could go ahead and make the cartridges pink to match our spherical hero while they were at it. The cartridge also featured the trademark notch that only otherwise appeared in first-generation Game Boy games and could thus fit into an original Game Boy. However, if this was attempted and the system was turned on, the screen would simply say, "This game pack will work only with the Game Boy Color video game system." Upon being ported to the US, Nintendo of America thought to rebrand the game with the wildly popular Pokémon, but ultimately the Kirby branding was preserved, with the simple story of the game appearing as follows. Tumbling into trouble. Popstar was always a nice place to be. Kirby napped on a cloud quite peacefully. But he suddenly woke as Waddle Dee scurried by. Then King Dedede, what a suspicious guy. They were headed for Dreamland, Kirby's own home, but what were they doing he didn't quite know. Kirby hopped on a warp star to go check it out, but when he reached Dreamland, he let out a shout. "No stars in the sky! What's going on?" King Dedede stole them and now they're all gone. He must have been jealous of that lovely night sky. Who can get the stars back? Kirby must try! Tilt N Tumble being a spin-off game much in the same vein of Kirby's Avalanche or Kirby's Dream Course, there really isn't much here in terms of narrative or lore apart from what we've already seen in Kirby's Dreamland. King Dedede stole the stars and Kirby has to get them back. Kirby does speak in this game, but his voice clips were pulled from Kirby 64 and Super Smash Bros., but they were quite reduced in quality to fit the limitations of the console. As with the other Kirby spin-off games, we do get a decent cast of Dreamlanders in Kirby Tilt N Tumble, which brings us to this episode's minor Troublemaker roll call. We have Big Kaboo, Blinkbat, Blockbot, Booler, Bronto Burt, Broom Hatter, Cappy, Cloud Cannon, Flotso, Godhand, Gordo, Kaboo, Mr. Frosty, Poppy Brothers Jr., Shotzo, Snipper, Squishy, Starman, UFO, Waddle Dee, and Waddle Doo.
The most perfect, wonderful, fantastic, and brilliant boy who ever lived, yes you are!
And not one Scarfy. None at all. Our bosses for Kirby Tilt N Tumble include 4 Orbservers, spherical guardians of varying power sets and colors, and speaking of cycloptic enemies, besides King Dedede and the Orbservers, the only other boss in Kirby Tilt N Tumble is Kracko, cementing his place as the boss that appears in the most Kirby games of any others, including Wispy Woods.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
As for the gameplay, as mentioned before, the game relies on built-in accelerometers in the game cartridge and prompts the player to calibrate said accelerometers when the game starts. The player is then expected to tilt the console itself in order to pilot the Kirby ball around increasingly difficult courses, with Kirball responding to both the angle and slope of the player's tilt.
Kirby balls at your local Target store.
Additionally, Kirby responds to a quick flick of the console by getting flung into the air, which can help avoid pitfalls and obstacles in each course. Over the 8 different courses, there are hazards which have varying effects on the speed of the Kirball and how steep the player has to tilt the Game Boy to get him to move through, say, water or quicksand. This was a game that was released with very specific requirements due to the nature of the motion sensors in the cartridge itself. Not only did the system being played on need to support that specific cartridge, but the cartridge needed to be sandwiched directly behind the screen that was being played on, or else the calibration of the Kirby ball would be off, making the Game Boy Color the only real system that worked for this game. And not only does that system predate streaming Let's Plays, but the difficulty of doing a Let's Play is right there in the title. Tilt N Tumble. There's a lot of tilting and tumbling. Now, I did hear a rumor that you can record the gameplay footage off of a Game Boy by connecting it to a GameCube, but I don't have one of those either. And I could pull up an emulator on my PC and use the joystick to control the Kirball, but that would be cheating. All this to say, there is no Curb Your Enthusiasm Let's Play segment for this game, but gamers in 2022 were given reason to believe that maybe this game could come back on modern technology, maybe, sort of, someday, possibly. But either way, in the meantime, please check the description for Tamahiro's actual gameplay video for Tilt N Tumble. She's a powerhouse YouTuber, and she goes into wonderful detail about the individual stages of the game, so I invite you to please check it out. Kirby Tilt N Tumble actually did really well, with most reviewers praising its technological ingenuity and how exciting the game was in spite of having such a simple premise. It is pretty universally panned in modern times because it doesn't add anything new to the Kirby franchise, but in spite of that, it is still considered one of the most innovative Game Boy games and ranks number 6 in the top-selling Game Boy games of all time in Japan. Game Rankings gives the aggregate score of Kirby Tilt N Tumble at 83%, and with nothing but the emulator experience in my belt, I have no choice but to agree. I also really appreciated the technology that was put into this game and the way that it tested the limits of the Game Boy in its waning years. I really liked the design of these stages and how they were all somewhat reminiscent of Zelda dungeons with their hazards and pitfalls and puzzles, and I really appreciate any game that's going to have Kirby as a round little ball rolling around a course. It's always going to bring the cute factor. There were a lot of Dreamlanders that were incorporated into this game's premise as well, with one in particular as the standout, and that is this episode's MVP, Most Valuable Poyo, Kracko. Whether it's as an obstacle on Kirby's Dream Course, as a boss in a Kirby's Dreamland title, or as a demon beast in Kirby Right Back at Ya, Kracko is reliably destructive, has a distinct and recognizable silhouette, and deserves his place of honor among Nintendo's Rogues Gallery. Go Kracko, you're a hero. And that does it for this look at Kirby Tilt N Tumble. Thank you to Azure Flux for the Kirb Appeal theme song, I Ate All the Snacks. That is off their album Pocket Boy. You can find a link to their channel as well as all of our sound effects in the description. And thank you, as always, for tuning in. Our next video should be right back on course with Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland, but it's hard to say for sure, so you better like and subscribe, because as much as I don't want to be known on the internet, I don't really have a release schedule. So until next time, this is Alex Reynolds with Kirb Appeal, reminding you to be kind, be brave, and consume your enemies. Take care. Quite reduced in quality to fit the limitations of the console. Quite reduced in quality to fit the limitations of the console. Quite reduced in quality to fit the limitations of the console. Kirby does speak in this game, and March 2001 marked the premiere of now Hot Topic darling Invader Zim. This dog, I swear to God. That's a butthole.